People say time heals all wounds. They say pain fades if you just wait long enough. But those people have never stood at a graveside holding the hand of a child who has stopped speaking. Those people have never watched the light disappear from the eyes of someone who used to laugh louder than anyone in the room. This story is not about time healing. It is about something far rarer. It is about two broken hearts finding each other in the silence and learning how to beat again. The day of the accident still lives in the bones of Max Carter's family. It was a bright Saturday morning in early spring, the kind of day when the sun feels warm for the first time in months and the air smells like promise. His father was cleaning the garage. His mother was washing strawberries at the kitchen sink. And Max was outside playing with his little sister, Emily, who danced around the driveway wearing her favorite pair of sparkly pink boots. She was 6 years old, small and fast, a streak of sunlight and laughter. No one heard the car coming around the curve. No one saw it until it was too late. All anyone remembers is the scream of brakes, the sound of metal on metal, and then silence so vast it swallowed the world whole. When the paramedics came, it was already over. Emily's boots lay alone in the gravel like two echoes of a life that should have gone on forever. Max never spoke again after that. Days passed, then weeks, then months. He stopped playing. He stopped eating more than a few bites. He stopped answering when people spoke to him. His parents tried doctors, therapists, specialists, medication, support groups. Nothing worked. He only sat, motionless, staring at nothing with eyes emptied of childhood and filled with something adults are never supposed to see in a child. Sometimes, late at night, his mother would sit outside his bedroom door and listen. She prayed she might hear him cry because crying would mean he was still alive somewhere inside. But there was nothing, just the quiet of a boy fading further and further away. The school counselor said he needed time. The therapist said he needed space. His father said he needed something to want again. One cold October morning, after another therapy session where Max sat silent and pale under fluorescent lights, his mother held her husband's hand in the parking lot and whispered the words neither of them wanted to say. "What if we're losing him too?" They went home and sat at the dining room table long after dark. Sometimes grief breaks people apart, but sometimes it makes them reach desperately toward each other because the alternative is unbearable. His mother remembered a ranch she used to volunteer at years before they had children. A horse rescue sanctuary deep in the countryside, where abused, abandoned, and neglected horses were given a chance at survival. The ranch owner used to say that animals do not heal through words but through trust, through presence, through time. His mother's voice trembled. Maybe we will take him there. Maybe silence can speak to silence. His father hesitated. Max had shown no interest in anything since the accident. He barely looked up from the ground. What difference could horses make? But grief teaches you that sometimes you must try something impossible because all the possible things have already failed. And so the next Saturday, they drove miles away from the city, past cornfields and rolling hills, through winding gravel roads lined with bare autumn trees. Leaves scraped the windshield like whispers. Max sat in the back seat, small and still, staring out the window with eyes that reflected nothing. The sign came into view. Cedar Ridge Horse Sanctuary, a home for the unforgotten. The ranch was quiet, peaceful, framed by worn wooden fences and pastures that stretched to the horizon. The kind of place where the sky felt close enough to touch. Horses grazed slowly in the fields, their tails flicking lazily in the wind. Some lifted their heads as the family approached, curious, gentle, patient. The ranch owner, a weathered man in his 60s named Daniel Hayes, walked toward them with a soft smile. He moved slowly as if every step mattered. Years at the sanctuary had carved kindness into the lines on his face. He shook their hands, Then he looked at Max, not with pity, not with expectation, just quiet understanding. Max's mother explained the situation in a shaky voice. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded and spoke softly. "Daniel, sometimes the ones who hurt the deepest do not need fixing. They need a place where no one tries to fix them. A place where they can simply exist until they remember how to breathe again." He looked down at Max gently. "Daniel, you don't have to talk here. You don't have to do anything at all. Just be." Max didn't answer. His eyes remained distant. But Daniel did not seem troubled. He simply motioned toward the paddocks. "Daniel, there is someone I would like you to meet." They walked across the field toward a smaller enclosure off to the side. Unlike the others, this one was quiet, isolated, separated from the herd. Inside stood a young grey mare, thin, trembling, her coat rough and scarred. Her ribs were visible beneath her skin. Her mane was tangled and uneven, as if someone had cut it in anger. She stood as far away as possible, eyes wide and untrusting. Daniel stopped a few feet from the fence. "Daniel, this is Luna." He spoke softly, like someone speaking near a sleeping child. "Daniel, she came to us a year ago. She was beaten badly. We're not sure what happened to her before she was found, but whatever it was, it stole her faith in the world. She doesn't let anyone touch her, won't take food from a hand, won't come near people. The closer you get, the further she moves away." Max's mother and father watched Luna with heavy hearts. She was in pain, standing on 4 shaking legs. Daniel's eyes remained fixed on Max. "Daniel, sometimes broken souls recognize each other before they recognize themselves." Max's parents exchanged a silent breath. Max, for the first time in months, looked up. Not long, not fully, but just enough. His eyes met Luna's for a fraction of a second. Something flickered. Not emotion, not healing, not understanding, just recognition. 2 beings who knew what it felt like to lose everything. Daniel stepped back. "Daniel, you can sit with her if you want. No rush, no expectations." Max slid down into the grass outside the fence. He wrapped his arms around his knees and stared into the distance. Luna watched him cautiously, muscles tense, ready to run, but she did not move away. The wind whispered through the tall grass. Leaves rustled overhead. The world grew quiet. And for the first time in a very long time, silence did not feel empty. It felt shared. Days passed, then a week, then 2. Every Saturday and Sunday, Max's parents drove him to the ranch. He never spoke, he never smiled. He never reached out. He simply sat in the same patch of grass outside Luna's enclosure. And Luna stood under the lone oak tree, watching him with eyes full of guarded pain. People whispered that the boy was wasting his time. People whispered that the horse was too far gone. People whispered about hopelessness. But there are some changes the world cannot see until they are already happening. On the morning of the 21st day, the ranch was wrapped in pale silver fog. The sun hung low, barely touching the horizon. Daniel found Max sitting in his usual spot, still and quiet. Luna stood closer than ever before, less than 10 feet away. She breathed slowly, ears perked, eyes soft rather than fearful. Daniel did not speak, he only watched. Max's breathing was calm, peaceful, steady. The fog curled around them like a blanket, then something happened. Luna took 1 step forward, and another, and another. Her hooves pressed carefully into the wet grass. Her body trembled, but she did not stop. Max lowered his hands from around his knees. His fingers twitched, hesitant, afraid. Luna stopped directly in front of him. For a moment, time froze. The world held its breath. Max lifted his hand slowly, painfully slowly, and placed it gently against the side of Luna's neck. It was her first human touch in more than a year. Luna closed her eyes, leaned into his hand, and exhaled a long, shuddering breath, like a storm leaving her body. Daniel felt tears burn his eyes. Max's parents stood behind him, hands pressed to their mouths in shock. And then something even more extraordinary happened. Luna lowered her head, pressing her forehead softly against Max's chest. Max's shoulders shook, his breath hitched, his fingers curled in her mane. And from somewhere deep inside, buried beneath months of silence and suffocating grief, came a sound. Max whispered one word: "Stay," the first word he had spoken since the day Emily died. Everyone who heard it knew they were witnessing a miracle. It was the moment the world began to turn again. Weeks after that first touch, the ranch took on a different shape around Max. It wasn't loud or sudden. There were no fireworks, no triumphant music swelling in the background. Healing rarely arrives with fanfare. Instead, it comes like the first breath after being underwater too long, small, trembling, but necessary. Every weekend, Max returned to Luna. He never spoke more than a word or two, and sometimes he said nothing at all. But something inside him began to shift, soft and slow, like ice cracking under the winter sun. Luna changed too. Where she once stood pressed to the far corner of her enclosure, eyes wide and fearful, she now waited near the gate, ears tilted forward, her gaze fixed on the road leading into the ranch. Daniel often watched from a distance, quietly, respectfully. "Horses do not hide the truth," he used to say. "Their bodies speak even when their voices cannot." And Luna's body said everything. One morning when Max arrived, she let out the softest rumble, half whinny, half whisper, her voice cracking with unfamiliar emotion. Max stopped walking. Their eyes met across the fence. Daniel felt something inside him tighten. The world had witnessed the first miracle. Now it watched the second begin. Max climbed through the fence carefully, and Luna stepped toward him without hesitation. He placed his hand against her cheek, and for the first time she didn't tremble. She leaned into him, closing her eyes, breathing in slowly as if memorizing him. Daniel stepped forward. "Daniel, she trusts you entirely. Do you want to try brushing her?" Max stared down, hesitant. His hand trembled slightly. For months after the accident, every small decision had looked like a mountain too steep to climb. But he nodded, barely visible yet fiercely brave. Daniel handed him a brush worn from years of use. Max approached Luna slowly, letting her see every movement. He lifted the brush and gently touched it to her neck. Luna flinched just for a heartbeat, but then she relaxed, leaning into the rhythm of his careful strokes. Daniel turned to Max's parents, who stood behind the fence, tears streaking their faces. Daniel whispered, "This is not just progress, this is rebirth." Over the following weeks, Max learned to groom Luna, to clean her hooves, to sit beside her for hours. He talked rarely, but occasionally a word slipped out unplanned, effortless. "Good girl, it's okay, I'm here." Small words, but powerful enough to rebuild worlds. His parents watched him transform. He began eating more, sleeping more. He looked people in the eye again. He still didn't laugh, not yet. But sometimes, when Luna nudged him gently with her nose, his mouth twitched, almost into a smile. It was like winter thawing under early spring light. But healing is never a straight line. One windy afternoon, everything changed. Luna was standing in the training ring, beginning her first attempt at walking with a halter. She had never been led before. The memory of being dragged and beaten still lived in her bones, and Daniel feared pushing her too soon would break her progress. But she needed to learn to trust beyond one person, or she could never join the herd, never fully live again. Daniel held the lead rope loosely, speaking softly, but Luna's breathing grew fast and shallow. Her muscles tightened. Her eyes darted wildly. The wind blew hard, rattling the gate and snapping a loose top loudly like a whip crack. Luna reared back in panic, hooves striking the air. Daniel stepped away, releasing pressure, trying to calm her. Max froze where he stood. The memories hit him with brutal force. The scream of brakes, the crash, the sound a body makes when the world ends. His chest tightened, his breath collapsed. He felt the ground tilt under his feet. Luna thrashed, trapped between terror and instinct. Max stepped forward, shaking, eyes wide with fear. His mother reached toward him. His father called out, "Max, wait." But Max kept moving, pulled by something deeper than fear, something stronger than memory. Luna's frantic eyes snapped to him. The world narrowed to two broken souls locked in the same storm. Max stepped beneath her trembling neck, gently placing his hands against her chest. He didn't speak, but his touch did. Luna's wild breathing slowed, her muscles softened. She lowered her head, pressing her forehead to his shoulder, trembling with leftover fear. Daniel watched with disbelief. Daniel, she chose him, she only feels safe with him. Max's father's voice shook. Father, what do we do now, Daniel? We follow their lead. After that day, Max took over Luna's training. Not by force, not by command, but by existing peacefully beside her. Every small step felt monumental. He learned to walk beside her with a rope held gently, never pulling, only guiding. He helped her practice touching new objects, hearing new sounds, meeting other horses. Sometimes Luna stumbled, sometimes she panicked. Sometimes Max did too. One afternoon, when Luna spooked a barking dog and nearly knocked into him, Max fell to his knees, covering his ears, gasping for breath, overwhelmed by the crash of memory and sound. His mother rushed toward him, but Luna reached him first. She lowered herself beside him, curling her neck around his shoulder, pressing her warm body against his shaking frame. Daniel whispered under his breath, "Daniel, look at her, she knows. She understands his pain because it mirrors her own." Max's voice broke through the panic, thin and cracked but real. "Max, I miss her." It was the first full sentence since the accident. Everyone froze, unable to breathe. Max buried his face in Luna's mane. "Max, I miss her so much." And the barn, usually filled with noise, went completely silent, like the world bowed its head in reverence. That night, Max's mother sat in the car, hands shaking around the steering wheel. "Mother, do you think he's coming back to us?" "Father, I think he already is. But the world is rarely generous without cost. True healing demands proof." And the storm waited just ahead. Winter arrived early that year. The first snow came silently in the night, covering the ranch in soft white layers that muffled every sound. The fields shimmered under pale morning sky, and the horses stood gathered near the fences, their breath rising like steam from a boiling kettle. The air smelled crisp and sharp, like the world was holding still. Max sat beside Luna in the pasture, wrapped in a thick jacket and scarf, his hands buried in her warm coat. She stood beside him, calm and steady, like a lighthouse in a storm. He was speaking more often now, quietly, slowly, but without the old hesitation. He told Luna about school sometimes. He told her about his favorite books. He even told her about Emily, the way she used to sneer dramatically when she lost a board game, the way she jumped into puddles just to make a mess. He didn't say how she died, he still couldn't. The words lived behind a wall too heavy to lift. But every time he spoke her name, Luna flicked her ears forward, listening deeply, as if she understood every syllable. Max found comfort in that. One afternoon, Daniel walked across the field, hands shoved into his pockets. The sky was dark, heavy with approaching weather. "Daniel, storm coming tonight, a rough one. We're bringing all the horses into the main barn." Luna raised her head, ears sharp. Storms frightened her. The sound of thunder reminded her of the violence she came from. Daniel never knew the full story, but he suspected metal pipes or gunshots, something loud, brutal, unforgettable. Max stood up and placed his hand on Luna's muzzle. "Max, I'll stay with her." His mother hesitated. The storm was forecast to be violent. Roads would ice over, trees might come down, but Daniel nodded. "Daniel, if she needs anyone tonight, it's him." They moved Luna into the barn early. The wind howled outside, rattling loose boards and bending tree branches like fragile reeds. Rain slashed against the roof in heavy sheets, and distant thunder rolled like a threat crawling across the horizon. Inside the barn, lanterns flickered. The horses shifted uneasily, hooves scraping against wood, tails whipping nervously. Luna paced inside her stall, muscles trembling, eyes wide. Max climbed into the stall with her, leaning against her side, whispering gently, "Max, it's okay, I'm here, you're safe." Luna pressed her nose against his shoulder. Her breath came fast, uneven. Thunder cracked again, closer now, shaking the ground. She jerked violently, panic taking over. The storm outside grew louder, like the sky was ripping in two. Another crack of thunder. The barn lights flickered once, twice, and then went black. The horses screamed in terror. Luna reared back, striking the air, her stall door shaking under the force. Max reached for her, trying to calm her, but she was blinded by fear. She kicked again, harder this time, and the latch snapped. The stall door swung open violently, slamming against the wall. Luna bolted into the darkness of the barn aisle. Daniel yelled out somewhere in the black space. "Daniel, don't let her get outside," but it was too late. The wind tore through the open barn doors like a living thing, and Luna burst into the storm, hooves pounding into the soaked earth. Max's breath caught in his throat. His mother called out from behind him, voice breaking, "Mother, Max, wait," but he was already running. He chased her through icy mud, the rain slashing sideways into his face, soaking his clothes, chilling him instantly. Lightning turned the night white for a moment, revealing Luna's silhouette disappearing into the trees. Max's voice tore through the storm. "Max, Luna," but the wind swallowed it whole. Behind him he heard shouts, Daniel, his father, ranch workers scrambling with flashlights, but Max didn't stop. His shoes slid on wet ground, branches whipped at his face, sharp and painful. He gasped for breath, each inhale burning his lungs. But he kept running, because he knew deep in his bones that Luna wasn't just running from the storm. She was running from the past, from pain, from ghosts that felt too big to fight. He knew what that felt like. The forest was a blur of black and white, shadows and wind and cold. The thunder roared so loud it shook the earth. Lightning split a tree in the distance, exploding wood into the air like shrapnel. Max stopped at the riverbank, chest heaving. The water had risen dangerously high, rushing with violent speed. And there, halfway across the riverbed, stood Luna, trembling in panic, trapped on a slick rock as the current slammed around her. Her front hoof slipped and she lurched sideways, barely catching herself. Max's heart nearly stopped. Behind him, voices shouted, "Daniel, Max, get back, the river's too high." But Max stepped forward, soaked, shaking, eyes wide, not with fear, but with fierce determination. "Max, I won't lose her too." Lightning lit up the river in blinding white. The water churned, angry, swirling with debris. Luna's eyes locked onto his, wide and terrified. And something inside Max snapped, not in breaking, but in release. For the first time since the accident, he felt the full weight of his grief. Not as numb silence, but as a scream rising inside him, unable to stay buried. Max stepped into the water. The cold hit him like knives. The current grabbed at his legs, threatening to pull him under. His feet slipped on mossy rocks and his arms flailed for balance. Daniel shouted again, voice raw, "Daniel." "Max, stop, you'll drown." Max didn't look back. He fought his way deeper into the rushing water, every step a battle. His legs ached, his skin burned, the storm roared like the end of the world. But he pushed forward, teeth clenched, tears mixing with rain. Luna shook violently, about to fall. Max reached out his hand. "Max, Luna, please," she cried out, a sound filled with fear and desperation, and stepped toward him, slipping off the rock, plunging into the water completely. The current seized her, dragging her downstream. Max threw himself toward her, fingers stretching, lungs burning. Their bodies collided hard, nearly pulling him under. Luna thrashed, unable to find footing. Max wrapped his arms around her neck, gripping with everything he had. "Max, I'm here, I'm not letting go." Daniel and the others raced along the riverbank, shouting instructions, searching desperately for a safe point to reach them. But the river was too wide, too wild, too fast. A fallen tree trunk wedged between the riverbanks appeared ahead like a bridge. The current slammed them toward it. Max reached one arm up, grabbing a branch. It tore at his skin, splintering into his palm, but he held on tight. Luna kicked, panicked, but he held her head above the water, muscles screaming in agony. "Max, stay with me, don't give up." With every ounce of strength left, Max pulled Luna toward the shallow bank behind the fallen tree. Slowly, painfully, inch by inch, they crawled onto the muddy shore, collapsing into the freezing earth. Max lay on his back, chest heaving, vision spinning. Luna lay beside him, shaking, exhausted, alive. Daniel dropped to his knees beside them, breathless. "Daniel, Max, you saved her." Max pressed his forehead against Luna's. "Max." "I couldn't save Emily." The words tore out of him, raw and broken. His mother knelt beside him, pulling him into her arms, sobbing into his soaked hair. "Mother, oh Max, it wasn't your job to save her. You were just a child." Max shook violently, grief ripping through him like a storm inside his chest. "Max, I miss her so much." His mother held him tighter, crying with him. "Mother, I know we all do, and we never stopped loving you. We never lost you, you just needed time to come back." Thunder rolled in the distance, quieter now. The storm was breaking. Luna lifted her head weakly, stretching her neck across Max's lap. He placed his hand gently over her eyes, breathing slowly. "Max, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in almost a year, he let himself weep, loud, messy, painful sobs shaking his whole body. And Luna stayed perfectly still, as if guarding his heart with her own. And out of the chaos, out of the wreckage, out of the storm, something new began, not the end of grief, but the beginning of hope. The storm passed in the early hours of the morning, leaving the ranch soaked and shining beneath a pale winter sun. The world felt strangely quiet after the violence of the night. Branches lay scattered across the ground, fences leaned crookedly. The river still roared with swollen currents, carrying broken pieces of trees and debris away like remnants of memories that refused to stay buried. Max sat wrapped in a thick blanket near the barn office, steam rising from the mug of hot tea in his shaking hands. His clothes had been changed, his hair dried, but his fingers still trembled. His face looked pale and exhausted, streaked with dried tears. Luna lay resting in a thick bedding of straw inside the warm barn, her body wrapped in blankets, her sides rising and falling slowly. She was scraped and bruised, her legs swollen from the force of the river, but she was alive. And every few minutes she lifted her head just enough to see where Max was. Max watched her through the open barn door. His chest rose and fell deeply, each breath steadier than the last. His mother sat beside him, holding his hand gently. His father stood nearby, arms crossed tightly, face red from holding back tears. Daniel walked over, his steps slow, his voice softer than ever. "Daniel, she will need time to heal, but she's strong, stronger than anyone ever believed." Max looked up at him, eyes red but clear. "Max, she never stopped fighting. Not even when she was terrified, she just kept going." Daniel nodded, his voice thick. "Daniel, just like you." Max's parents exchanged a quiet glance, full of relief, pride, and a grief that finally had space to breathe. For the first time in months, Max felt something shift inside him. Grief didn't vanish, it didn't loosen its grip entirely, but it changed shape, no longer a cold weight suffocating his heart, but something that carried meaning. Something he could hold instead of something holding him. Luna nickered softly from inside the barn. Max stood, legs still unsteady, and walked to her stall. She lifted her head, eyes soft, ears relaxed. He knelt down and placed his forehead gently against hers. "Max, I'm here, I'm not leaving." Luna closed her eyes, pressing into him with trust so complete it felt like a sacred thing. That was the day everything began to change. Winter settled fully across Cedar Ridge. Snow piled thick on the fences, turning the ranch into a white cathedral of quiet. Luna's wounds healed slowly. Max came every weekend, sometimes after school when the weather allowed. He brushed her carefully, walked her gently around the paddock, spoke to her in a voice that grew steadier with each passing day. The other horses began to accept her into their herd. At first she stood apart, uncertain. but eventually she began to graze beside them, learning the comfort of belonging again. Max changed too. He spoke more, first only to Luna, then to Daniel, then to his parents. He began returning to school, still quiet but present. He joined a support group. He drew pictures of Luna in art class. His teachers said his eyes looked brighter, like someone had turned on a light that had been off for far too long. At the ranch, he helped Daniel with chores, learning how to repair fences, clean stalls, fill water troughs. Daniel worked beside him without crowding him, offering small lessons in silence. Daniel, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without drowning. One evening, as the sun set orange and pink across the snow, Daniel leaned on the fence beside Max. "Daniel, Luna is ready for her first ride, but she won't let anyone else near her back. I think she'll only try with you." Max stared at Luna, heart pounding. He looked afraid, not of falling, but of failing her. "Max, what if she's not ready?" "Daniel, then you stop, you listen, you wait. That's what trust is." Max nodded slowly, breathing deeply. He climbed onto the mounting block, one hand resting on Luna's back. She stiffened briefly, then relaxed beneath his touch. Her muscles trembled, but she did not step away. "Daniel, whenever you're ready." Max swung one leg over her gently, settling his weight carefully on her spine. Luna stiffened again, shaking, eyes wide. Then she felt his hand on her neck, steady, fearless. "Max, it's okay, I'm right here." She exhaled a long breath, and slowly, step by step, she began to walk. The snow beneath her hooves crunched softly. The wind moved through the trees like a quiet choir. Max sat straight, hands light, tears filling his eyes. His parents stood by the fence, arms around each other, crying more openly than they ever had. It wasn't just a ride, it was resurrection. Months later, when spring returned and flowers broke through thawing soil, the ranch held its annual open day, an event where rescued horses were introduced to potential adoptive families and supporters. Dozens of people gathered around the arena, watching demonstrations and listening to stories of survival. Daniel stepped to the center, microphone in hand. He looked at the crowd, then at Max and Luna standing quietly at the gate. "Daniel, today I want to tell you about two souls who saved each other. This is Luna. She came to us broken, terrified, unable to be touched by human hands. Many said she would never recover. Many believed she was too damaged to trust again. But she found one person who understood her pain, not with words, but with silence." Max stood at Luna's side, his hand resting against her shoulder. She leaned gently into him. "Daniel, and this is Max. A boy who lost his sister in a tragic accident. A boy who stopped speaking, who fell into darkness so deep we feared he might never climb out again. But he did, because Luna needed him as much as he needed her." The crowd fell silent, eyes shining, hearts aching. "Daniel, their story is proof that healing is not a path you walk alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is reach out your hand and say, without speaking, I'm still here." Max swallowed hard, stepped forward and took the microphone. His voice shook, but he spoke. "Max, I thought I was supposed to save her, but really she saved me. And she taught me something: we don't heal by forgetting. We heal by remembering with love, not pain. I'll always miss Emily, but I'm ready to live again because she would want me to, and Luna showed me how." Daniel wiped his eyes. Dozens of others did the same. Luna pressed her head against Max's chest, calm and sure. Max placed his hand along her neck, steady and warm. "Max, stay," the word that changed everything. The world likes to talk about strength as if it means never breaking, never crying, never falling apart. But real strength is softer, it's quieter, it's sitting in the darkness and refusing to surrender. It's reaching out even when your hands shake. It's trusting again after you've been hurt. It's loving without knowing if your heart can survive the loss. It is the courage to stay. Some wounds never fully disappear, some memories always ache. But pain can shape us without destroying us. It can carve space for empathy, for connection, for love deeper than anything that existed before. Two broken souls met in silence and taught the world that healing doesn't need words. It needs presence, it needs patience, it needs one reason to try again. Sometimes that reason has four legs and a heartbeat. At sunset, Max rides Luna slowly across the pasture, golden light catching her silver coat. The wind moves gently through the grass, birds fly overhead. The world feels endless again. Emily's favorite boots sit by the stable door, filled with bright spring flowers placed there by Max himself, not as a memorial to death, but as a promise of life. Max lifts his face to the sky, eyes clear, breathing freely. And Luna walks forward steady and strong. Together they became whole again.